I'm gonna start this video off with a story. My wife and I are going on a trip next week. This is gonna be our first time going on a big overnight trip since we've been married, so we're really excited about it. And not wanting to spoil the trip with all my photography nonsense, I wasn't gonna subject her to the slow shooting of my large format, my Mamiya 645, or my Leica M6. So in the months leading up to the trip, I decided that I was gonna get on the internet and buy a new camera. This time I was gonna get something that was really easy and fast to shoot, something that wouldn't slow down our trip and would allow me to get the shots that I wanted on film really quickly. And because I've owned one of these cameras before in the past and I know they're exceptional, I wound up with a Nikon F100. This is the Nikon F100 that's caused me so much trouble at this point, but I'm not gonna bury the lead. I bought this camera off eBay in mint condition from Japan. The camera looks absolutely exceptional. So I received the camera and decided that I would test it out with the only lens that I had at the time, which was my Nikon 50mm 1.8, one of the only lenses that you really need in the Nikon system, the 51.8. It's absolutely tremendous. So I tested the lens with the camera, works great, and that led me down the path of needing another lens. As photographers, we always need more lenses. So I decided for my next lens for the camera, I would get something that covered the whole range, something that would give me high image quality, be really durable, and cover everything in the range. That led me to the Nikon 28-70 2.8. So I got this lens in, also bought it from Japan, was really excited about it. It's not in the greatest condition, but I picked it up for like $275, so super stoked with it. It's a massive lens, it's made mostly of metal. So I plopped the lens on the camera, and wouldn't you know, I experienced some focusing problems with the camera. So I decided, oh, the camera works fine with this lens, it's only having a little bit of trouble with this lens, so I solved the problem the only way my wife thinks I know how, which is to continue throwing money at it. And I bought another lens. This time it's the Nikon 85 1.8. This one has an aperture ring on it, and it's a great high quality optic for this camera system. So I bought this lens, plopped it on the camera, and wouldn't you know, it wouldn't autofocus either. That led me to believe that this camera had some focusing issues, despite the seller assuring me that this camera had been tested. So at this point, a couple weeks later, we finally troubleshooted the issue with the camera. It's a problem with the camera's screw drive. The only issue for me was now we are 4 or 5 days away from the trip and we don't have a functioning camera to take with us, and we have a lot of lenses. All of that is basically a pretext for what this video is about today, and that is the problem with buying cameras and lenses off eBay. Unfortunately, I'm running into this problem more and more, and maybe some of you guys are too. eBay is a website that's been around for a really long time. Absolutely love eBay. It's been a wonderful place where I can buy things at a really significant discount, and more often than not, it's also where I sell most of my things as well, to recoup some of the money when I change hobbies or change cameras. eBay's a really good tool, but over the last couple of months, a few of the transactions that I've had have started to become a little more problematic. So I wanted to share some info with you guys, specifically as it relates to buying cameras off eBay. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the video, but the seller assured me that this camera had been tested, and I can only conclude at this point that the seller tested the camera with a newer Nikon lens, because as I talked about earlier in the video, this lens, the Nikon 50-1.8, the more recent lens, worked just fine on the camera, but it's the older lenses that don't. And I think that the issue that we're running into is a lot of times the people that are selling these cameras online are, number one, not testing the items at all, or number two, not doing a very thorough test. I mean, let's be clear, it takes a degree of skill and expertise to know that there were two different focusing systems employed in these lenses and to know to test each of those systems. So get the camera in, doesn't work, I'm really disappointed. So after that, I reached out to the seller, told him what the issue was, sent him pictures and a little video clip of what was going on, and the seller quickly replied and said, look, I'm sorry, I didn't test the camera. So that kind of answered all we needed to know. He's giving me a refund, he's paying for the shipping to ship the camera back to him, but I'm out a lot of time and hassle dealing with somebody else's mistake. So I don't know if you guys are experiencing this as well, but lots of folks are buying these pallets of Amazon return items and then reselling those items. Again, you're running into the issues with people reselling those items and then not properly testing them. And I feel like that's something that's manifesting in the camera market. Lots of times people are buying and selling cameras on eBay. People are going to these pallet stores, buying these items at a really discounted price and then trying to flip them and sell them on eBay, only for us to find at the end that these items, for whatever reason, weren't working in the first place. So that's just something to be on the lookout for. It seems like that's happening more and more often. If you're buying something on eBay, do your research, and really on the back end, you need to run lots of tests on your items when you get home, or you're gonna let that return window close and you're not gonna be able to return the item. So as film photographers who wanna use eBay, who wanna continue using the service, what do we do to combat this? Well, the first piece of advice that I would give you is to read the auction carefully. And if you have any questions about the item, reach out to the seller and ask in advance. This is something that I could have done. I had the knowledge about the different focusing systems in the Nikon cameras. I'd owned one of these cameras before. I should have asked, do the focusing systems work? Have you tested it with both kinds of lenses? And the seller would have either told me yes or I don't know. And if he told me I don't know, I know he's not doing thorough testing, probably not the guy to buy from. So check over the listing, make sure that all the information that you're looking for is there, and make sure that your items have been tested. Also, something else that's worth paying attention to is understanding the item condition and what they actually mean. I find that a lot of the items that I buy from Japan are underrepresented in terms of their condition. The Japanese, for whatever reason, tend to take care of their stuff a lot better than we do. But really understand what the condition of the item is. That way, when you get the item in, you're not getting something you didn't expect. What is excellent condition to one person may not be excellent condition to another. Just something to bear in mind. Another tip for not getting burned on eBay is really looking at those photographs. Lots of times, sellers are really good at including several photographs of an item. Make sure that you really look at them, blow them up on your computer screen, take a look, and make sure that everything is as it shows. And I'll give you an example of me not doing my homework. So look at the 28-70. Most of you guys will look at that and say, hey, lens looks good. Well, if you notice, there's one thing missing, and that's the rubber ring on the zoom part of the lens. You'll notice that that ring isn't going to try to buy a new one, but if I had looked at the eBay auctions a little more carefully, that the lens is missing that thing, and it would have been something I wouldn't have had to fix on the back end. Specifically when we're dealing with film cameras, and this really isn't an issue with the Nikon F100, it's very rare that the lot seals get in bad shape on these cameras, but there are cameras where it's worth asking if the lot seals are intact. Specifically when you're dealing with large format cameras, those types of things, you want to make sure your camera's lot tight. That way you're not getting back and you're wasting a bunch of film, light leaks all over the place. Unless that's what you're after. Lots of times it's worth asking as well about mold, fungus, and dust. A lot of times these lenses and cameras that come from Japan, many folks out there don't take care of their cameras and lenses like we all wish they would, especially when it comes to dust and mold. Folks can keep these cameras and lenses in boxes. I was recently gifted a couple of old film cameras from a guy at work, and he's like, are you going to be able to use these? And I was like, yeah, I'll be able to use them as shelf decorations. The insides of them were just completely choked full of dust. Reach out to your seller beforehand. Just make sure that there aren't going to be any unwanted surprises. And I've already touched on this, but ask the seller lots of questions about how recently this camera and those lenses were tested. If I had been a little more prudent on the front end, I wouldn't have had to circle back and buy a more expensive camera just a few days later and pay for the extremely expensive overnight shipping to get it here for my trip. And that leads me to my next point. There is an expression, and I say it all the time, and that's that the poor man pays twice. And unfortunately, I have fallen victim to this. In this case, I wanted to buy a camera and try to save a little bit of money. I got a very good price on a Nikon F100 from Japan. And I bought that because I have had really good luck buying cameras and lenses from Japan in the past. But this time, I took my time, won an auction instead of a buy it now, got the camera in, and it didn't work. And getting back to the expression, the poor man pays twice, there are retailers out there, more established camera companies, and you're probably already thinking of a few, Harry's, KH. These companies, their prices aren't nearly as good and competitive as some of these smaller sellers from Japan and even auction prices from the United States, but these companies are doing a better job testing these cameras and making sure you're getting exactly what you're buying. It was one of those retailers that I ended up having to circle back and buy another copy of the F100 for. So the moral of this very long and very stupid story is that if you need something here by a particular time and you want to make sure that it works, you need to buy it from a reputable dealer. That's not to say that things can't also go wrong when you're dealing with somebody like KEH or Harry's or, like I said, one of those other photography gear companies, but I think the chances are much lower because those companies are doing a better job testing their gear. And so at this point, I wouldn't recommend that you try to save money on your camera and lenses by buying through sketchy online retailers, but I do have 5 other ways that you can try to save money with film photography. So check out that video before you go. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching. See ya.